Okay, it's 7 o'clock. I would like to call the Rockingham County Planning Board and Board of Adjustment to order. Mr. Harris, would you give us an invocation, please?
Let us pray. Most gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity that we can meet tonight for the Rockingham County Planning Board and Board of Adjustments meeting. Be with us tonight as we review these cases. Help us to adhere to the guidelines of the regulations and make them all fair to all participating parties. We ask these things in your precious name. Amen.
Before we move on to the approval of the minutes, I'm going to take chair's privilege and recognize Paul Sinowitz, who is with us tonight. And for those of you who don't know, Mr. Sinowitz has been sitting in this chair for a long time, doing an incredible job. And he has been had some illness lately, and we are very, very pleased to have him join us tonight. And he's coming back to the planning board in January, and we are very, very grateful for that. So I just wanted to recognize him and his work and his wife's work for getting him well for us. So we really appreciate that. Thank you so much. The next order of business is to approve the minutes, if we can do that. After you've reviewed, if I may have a motion, please.
Madam Chair, I'll motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Raise your hand. Minutes are approved. I'd like to now review the procedures for the planning board. The procedures for public hearings conducted by the Rockingham County Planning Board and Board of Adjustment. Guidelines for speakers. Any and all person who would like to speak regarding any case being heard by the planning board must sign the case file roster prior to the beginning of the meeting. For quasi-judicial hearings, any and all persons who would like to speak regarding any variance or special use permit case being heard by the planning board must be sworn by the presiding board member prior to the case hearings. Additionally, each speaker must be recognized by the presiding board member prior to speaking. When recognized, each speaker must approach the podium, state their name and address before speaking. Unless otherwise specified, all testimony, evidence, and comments should be directed towards the board chairperson or presiding board member. Please remember that it is expected that many will wish to speak about these cases. Once speakers begin, if you agree with an argument already presented in favor or against, please practice the courtesy of indicating with a show of hand or a short statement of support rather than presenting the same argument again. Groups are also encouraged to send a representative to speak on their behalf. This will allow more citizens the opportunity to be heard. Case hearing guidelines. Each case will be presented to the board by a member of the planning staff. Following the staff presentation, the case applicant will be given the opportunity to brief the board regarding the case. Following the applicant's presentation, those who have signed up to do so will be granted the opportunity to speak against or in support of the proposal. If needed, the board chairperson reserves the right to set limits for each speaker. After the hearing from the public, the applicant will be given an opportunity for rebuttal. This will be followed by board discussion, motions, and voting procedures. May we hear the first case before the Planning Board, Special Use Permit, case number 2020-30.
Take this off so you can hear me. This is a special use permit to allow for a reception banquet facility in a residential agricultural district. The property is located at 117 Southern Seas Trail in the southwestern part of the county. This gives you an idea of where the property is located within our land use plan. It is in the rural transition land class intended to accommodate existing residential neighborhoods and balance the need to retain the area's character. The residential agricultural zoning district purpose is to provide a place for low-density residential uses and agricultural uses. This is a closer-up picture of the property showing you where it's located. And an aerial view of the property. The special use permit is being requested for pretty much the entirety of the 74-acre parcel, not across the entire parcel, but in various places on the parcel, according to a site plan that the applicant has submitted. The site plan in your packet will differ from the one that is on the screen right now. You have it viewed on your screens so that you can be clear. It's similar, it just gives us more detail about where the various parts of the event facility are going to take place. A special events reception banquet facility is a special use permit with a series of standards that you have in your packet from the development ordinance. Staff feels that the applicant has submitted adequate evidence and documentation to support the request, and we do recommend approval.
Does anyone have questions for staff? I have a couple questions.
Okay. I'll get up that easy.
Has the applicant, so this is pretty much straight up, just an event space. Did they give any other kind of indication about how much traffic or how many events?
They
say-
did, and their application is, indicates that. They're also here tonight to describe, I'm looking to see, I don't think the application is in your packet.
Okay.
But they are here this evening to describe their intent. And of course, you're reviewing it through the lens of the ordinance and the standards for the special use permit.
Do you have any other information that you think, or any guidance that we
do have
should? So, do you have any other guidance that you think that we should be cognizant of?
Yeah, the only other issue it's not really an issue, it's an interpretation. When this ordinance was written, it was specifically concerned with folks operating a hotel versus an events facility. And there's a section in here about the structure. And this is talking about new residential, about residential structures that are used for reception facility, are not to encompass overnight accommodations. My interpretation of this is that the wedding-style host of the wedding there's one of the buildings will be used as a bride's quarters, and that I feel that the bridal party and direct hosts of the event would be able to stay in those facilities. The other point is that once this zoning is passed, should the zoning be passed, the applicant will be submitting permits to us so that we can ensure that all the facilities meet the building code for their various uses. And you do have, Philip just showed me, their application has more details that meet the special use permit requirements.
Okay. Any questions for staff? Thank you, Carrie.
Sure.
May we have the applicant come forward? Jennifer Gore? Is there, yep.
Is there what?
Is there a Bible
There's a Bible
available?
right
Can you
there.
stand up okay?
Does she need the Bible?
Yes, we need to swear her in. Yes, if we place your right hand in the Bible and raise your left hand. Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God? Thank you. Okay, Ms. Gore, can you tell us more about this request?
Certainly. Do you mind if I take this off?
You
for
can
just
stick it on.
while I'm speaking, so I don't hyperventilate underneath this mask. But thank you all for having us this evening and talking about our request. So the parcel that we're talking about that Ms. Spencer mentioned is 75 acres. And it's a part of a total 127-acre farm that's been in existence for 30 years. So it's quite the history and quite the character and quite a beautiful piece of land in Rockingham County. And so what we wanted to do is be in a position to be able to share it with more people. Mm-hmm. And that would be with small groups coming in for individual time with the horses or, whatever really might come up. We've done a lot of photo shoots up to this point because it really is beautiful. And then we want to have receptions and weddings on the property because it just lends itself so well to that. And it's also the way that we'll be able to pay for it. So it becomes an income-producing property that covers the mortgage. But we've planned that there'll only be one event per day on a weekend, and so next year our ambition is to have 20 to 30 weddings maybe across the year. So it's not particularly robust or busy operation that we're looking at. And many of those couples that we have talked to who have expressed an interest in next year are looking at maybe 50 people at their service. So, certainly it fits well within the space that we have. And the property also lends itself really well to privacy for an event, but also privacy for the roadway and our neighbors, because there's quite a bit of woods that buffer around where the reception area would be. There's also a log cabin that was built in 1815, something like that, and moved to the property in 1990, and we'd also like to use that as an Airbnb site. Again, for income-producing purposes, and also because it's very charming. You should all come out and take a look at it. It's worth seeing. And there is also a 6-stall barn that's currently not being used on the property that could be used, again, as income-producing if someone wanted to host a small wedding or reception inside there if it was raining or the weather was bad. So we'd like to ask in this special use permit that we are authorized to judiciously and carefully and respectfully use the land in a way that pays our mortgage and enables other people to come onto the property and enjoy how beautiful it is, how serene it is, and gets used as God intended.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Just have a couple of questions, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Do you have a projected revenue that you're hoping to accomplish with this, if we were to pass this?
It's not really germane to the special use permit. Was there a reason, were you asking maybe about the intensity of the operation, or? And I think
In that direction, yeah.
yeah, they've indicated the number of guests that they project, but it's the revenue piece of it isn't something that we can consider as part of a special use permit.
guess I do have one question. The parcel just beyond that, are you guys the owners of that property, or is that owned by somebody else? The road that comes in and goes back, is that 230, 240?
Yes.
Okay,
We own everything to the west of the south.
okay. Is that for residents? It's not. The 230 and 240, is that a residence right there? Private lot?
There's 5 houses on the 127 acres,
Okay,
one of which is the log cabin.
gotcha.
So you don't, what looks to be a barn and pastures in the house, you don't own that piece. You own everything else around it, right?
They also own the property to the south, I think is what they're
Right.
talking about, where the arena is.
Everything to the left of Hudson Road.
Correct.
Yeah.
Basically, most of what's in the photograph here.
Okay, so you do own that, what looks to be a barn and pastures at the curved driveway.
Yes,
Yeah.
Okay, so you own all of that as well?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, those people wouldn't be happy with us doing an event center otherwise.
So, can I, Carrie, on the diagram with the plot for the parcel, the tax pin number,
Yes.
it doesn't include the event center and, potential event center, and that's off to the left?
Not at this time.
Not at
The-
this,
the
so
up-
this is we're only considering whatever property or that they have that's under this tax.
Under that pin, that's correct.
Even though on their other diagram they're showing event space and stuff.
Which is why we had to redo the site plan so
Got it.
that it
Okay,
lined
thank
up
you.
correctly.
Okay, thank you.
And I advised them that if they were interested in expanding the facility, you would see them again and would modify the special use permit to
And if you do, it's
include
because-
additional facility parcels.
I was going to say, if you do see us again, it's because we've been wildly successful.
But thanks for pointing that out. There was some.
Madam Chairman, you'd mentioned about a proposal of a possibility of a Airbnb. Carrie, would that come under any other guidelines rather than special use for this?
It really doesn't. Our ordinance doesn't specifically address short stay, a short stay use right now. Airbnb, the Airbnb operation has been considered, and it is, in my opinion, a really well-run. The property owner has to own the house. It's in their best interest for it to be used properly. They'll be under contract with the users of the space, and it's basically a private residence that they are allowed to rent out for short stays. As any home in the county right now, basically, if they don't have prohibitive covenants in a neighborhood, could use their home in that way.
So our ordinance is actually behind the times because Airbnb is relatively a new
It's
phenomenon.
relatively new, and our ordinance itself is from, 1986, but
Right.
Eric is put in a use for short stay, residential short stay. We've addressed that for the rewrite.
Okay.
And also, all the facilities on this diagram, does any of those exist or all of those planned?
Everything on it so far exists. The one that's marked pavilion is a structure that we're gonna have plans on hopefully in a few weeks, and we'll start the building permit process to build a 60 by 100 pavilion style structure that eventually will get closed in. The ceremony tab you see basically is just the start of the dock on the lake and the grassy area in front of it. That's where most of the weddings would take place. The lodge itself is the 4-bedroom residence that we are going to start the process to see if it's feasible to upgrade it and change its use as a residence, which it hasn't been used as a residence since we purchased the property, and it's not going to be used, so to speak, as a residence. We're hoping we can convert it to commercial use, if it's feasible, with fire code and firewalls and so forth. If not, then we'll just continue to use it as bride's quarters. The horse barn, as Jenny mentioned, is just an old 6-stall horse barn that in the future, if it makes sense, we may apply for a permit to change its use, gut it out, rework it for small events as well. And of course, the log cabin is an existing cabin on the property that actually has central heat and air. And it's just a 1-bedroom, 1-room cabin.
Let me stop you just for a second here.
Yeah.
Well, I need to correct a procedural here. Your name, sir, is?
So my name is Scott Horn.
I need to swear you in too, please.
Okay. We can do it after.
Let's do this now. Okay, do you swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
If I may, I wanted to point out that while this use is for a reception banquet facility, they'll also hope to have events related to the farm, the equestrian farm. And there isn't another sort of use that fits it. So they're just asking for the ability to host activities at all of the buildings that are on the site plan.
And that was actually going to be my question. It appears that this is a horse farm. Is that, am I correct about that?
Yes.
Okay. Is there, do you have horses there now?
16.
Okay. Does that have any bearing on, like, the use of the?
Yeah, only in a positive way if they can manage to produce some sort of income such as hay from the property and become a bona fide farm for tax purposes, which is something that's always a very good idea. But no, the horses don't. When somebody is choosing to use the property, they'll know, they'll understand that there's a variety of potential events that could be there, and it does not prohibit the use under this category.
Okay.
And the majority of the horses are actually on the plot to the west, which is 240. There are a few horses on 117, and we may acquire a few more in that we have the land, but we do produce our own hay. We produce about 10 acres on 240 and probably a little bit more on the 117 plot, so we are self-sustaining.
And do you currently live there?
I reside on the 240 side.
Okay.
Yes. And as Jenny mentioned earlier, we have a couple of rental houses on that side of the property too.
Okay, so there's rental houses on that side of the property. And you're anticipating maybe 20 weddings a year, do you think? Or 20 events a year, do you think?
At least 20, yeah.
Okay. And you said probably no more than 50 guests or attendees?
I think that would be an average. We don't know because we've not done it yet.
Right.
You know, but projecting into it, that's probably 50 to 100 is a reasonable average.
Okay. Are there any more questions? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Thank you very much.
And if my suggestion is that when you do make a motion, that you condition it based on the application and site plan that were submitted, because that covers all of the uses that they plan to do.
Thank you so much.
Madam Chairman, move to approve the request for a special use permit conditioned on the application and site plan that were submitted. And as part of this motion, you adopt the statements required by General Statute 153A-341 and 153A-342. The action is consistent with the Rockingham County Land Use Plan. After review of competent material and substantial evidence in the record, the board finds that the use or development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated so as to maintain or promote public health, safety, and general welfare, because it will not impose significant harm on the neighbors and surrounding community. That the use or development complies with all required regulations and standards of this ordinance and all other applicable regulations, because compliance with all required regulations is a condition of the special use permit. That the use or development is located, designed, and proposed to be operated so as to maintain or enhance value of contiguous property, because it will be compatible with the quality of existing developments in the neighborhood and have similar impacts as the surrounding building types. And that the use or development conforms with the general plans for the land use and development of Rockingham County as embodied in the UDO, because a reception banquet facility is allowed in the residential agricultural district with a special use permit.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Motion is carried. At this time, may I have a motion to adjourn the planning board and move to the adjustment board?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. The planning board has adjourned. The Board of Adjustment is now called to order.
Madam Chair, you very likely read the procedures when you read them for the planning board as applicable also to the
I
Board of
did, and they are the
Adjustment.
same, so I don't see any reason to do that again. We would like to hear public hearings before the board. Variance case number 2020-31. If we could have staff present, please.
This applicant is requesting a variance to the dimensional requirements of the ordinance. He is asking for a variance to the setback. He's asking for 7 feet from the required setback of 15. Staff concludes that the applicant has submitted a complete application. The minimum setback is 15 to the rear and 15 to the sides. The applicant has presented evidence that we feel is adequate for you to make an informed decision. And a reminder that variances are granted with a concurring vote of 4/5, and if all of the 4 conclusions listed in your staff report can be reached, and that you can determine that the 6 items at the end of your staff report, the proposed variance will not extend, change the district boundaries, impair supply of light, increase public danger, material diminish property, or in any way impair the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare.
Have all the board members read the approval process and the conclusions 1 through 4?
Those are reflected on your analysis and statement as well.
And I just want to make sure that we all,
Yeah.
that we take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Is the applicant here, Robert Rackley? Oh, I'm sorry. getting ahead of myself here. Sorry about that. Do any of the board members have questions of staff?
Just one, Madam Chair. Was there any calls for or against?
There were not.
Here, can I ask how this came up? You know, what was the,
The property owner came to submit a building, to apply for a building permit, and discovered that the location he needed to put his building in was too close to the property line. And so staff advised him that he would need a variance in order to put it there, if it wasn't feasible for him to locate it in a different place on the property.
Was the building constructed anyway?
I don't believe this building was built in, that it was a after-the-fact permit, no. I can clarify that. It was. I'm wrong. This is a situation that brings an existing building into compliance with the ordinance. I apologize.
And this, it wouldn't be grandfathered in?
So was there a determination on the staff part about the unnecessary hardship and sort of review of the difficulty of moving the building or stuff like that?
I ask my staff and myself not to make judgment calls for cases like this for a variance, because it is such a subjective situation, and would rely on the board's opinion for this. We just feel like there's enough information for you to discern whether or not it's acceptable.
Did you see that?
Any other questions from staff, for staff?
Yes. Carrie, did you say that the request for the variance was before the building was brought in or after the building was brought in?
This is after the building was already on the site. I was incorrect when I first said that it was before.
So the variance was requested after the building was brought
Correct.
in?
In order to bring a building that had already been built into compliance with the ordinance. I can say the building was built in a way that would not grandfather it. It was built after 1886 and
Okay.
in a time period when it couldn't be grandfathered into the ordinance, into an older ordinance.
Do we know how long the building has been there?
I don't, but I'm happy to invite either Bryson or
I'll
Emily.
I'll ask that, yeah.
Yeah, she stepped out for a second.
Okay.
They can answer the building.
Are they here? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Okay.
The
Yeah, I'll
applicant
save
is
that.
here. Let's-
Yeah, I'll save that for him.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if they were here.
If there are no more questions for staff? Okay. Mr. Rackley, you're here. Can you please approach and be sworn in? Do you swear or affirm that the evidence you shall give to the board in this action shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
If you will approach the podium and state your name and address, please.
My name's Robert Rackley. I live at 421 Red Oak Drive in Stokesdale, North Carolina.
Board members, do you have any questions?
I think where we were going with the timing was how long before we made this application was the building put up on the land?
Okay. May I elaborate on how this all came about? So there was an anonymous complaint called in. It was out of retaliation for us contacting the sheriff's department on them. And so I have a signed statement. Sorry, I'm getting off track. 3 years, roughly, has the building has been in place. But how it came about that we are here to request the variance is, like I said, there was an anonymous complaint I have signatures from our surrounding neighbors and site plans showing that our intentions were not to disregard any, laws or regulations or codes, but we placed the building at the time and in the same position as other buildings around us were placed. We know better not to put a structure on the property line, but I was not aware of, the 15-foot setback regulation or ordinance. Again, the building's been there for well over 3 years. We purchased the building. I didn't stick build it or anything like that, but we purchased the building locally and brought it in. Like I said, I have sworn statements from the surrounding neighbors that attest to the fact that they never have an issue. Matter of fact, they, think what I've done so far looks good, and no problems or complaints whatsoever from any of our neighbors that shared the property line with us and across the street as well.
Thank you.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, when the setback discovery was made when you came in to apply for an after-the-fact permit to bring it into compliance, is that
Well,
correct?
it was questioned by the Mr. Bryson. He did have a question. I'm not sure.
Wasn't
We're going to
sure,
have to
yeah.
look into it. And yes, I did come in to get permits.
To
and-
properly permit it?
Yes,
And
and
then
then
really, okay.
that's when Ms. Bacon, Emily, said that she thinks for a fact that it does not meet the 15 feet. I did provide photographs showing that our intentions were to keep it off the property line as much as possible. I don't know if they have this packet that but yeah, yeah. So that's, I have a picture here that shows the fall of the land is just, basically I'd say 60% of the property is useless. It falls so much and it's wooded, it's kind of shaped like a flag, which I think you could, oops, sorry. Well, look at that. But the fall of the land, basically the only flat area of the property is where the house is setting. From that point on, there's the septic tank is in front of the house, so that's not, we're not able to put anything there. The fall of the land is every 6 feet it falls about 3 feet. So if I was to put any type of building on the other side of the home, it would be unsightly. The back of the building would probably be 6 feet off the ground. It just would be. I was looking to see if we had this that showed, but I don't think it's on there.
They have it in their packet,
We do.
but it's not on the overhead. This is if you'll hold it up so you can see. It's talking about the photo with topography.
There's a screen right there, and
Yeah, there is, yeah, as you go down to the very end of the property line, which is kind of shaped like a flag or a Q or something. All that's wooded. I mean, and it is very steep. And like I said, there's really no other option.
I just have an observation to note on the adjoining tract 443. I know the aerial photos they're not exact, but it looks like that building is actually overhanging on your property.
It,
Or,
yes, sir.
But the accuracy is determined by the photos that he's got with the measurement from the property line and, but yeah, it's that situation where the web of parcel lines is off in GIS.
That building is very close. I did have some questions about, to Mr. Bryson about, the fact that you know, you come on to the property and you see so many other infractions, you know, why am I being, you know, and so he explained to me, I was a little upset. No crosswords or, you know, anything like that. Just more of questioning why, you know, this building and that building and the, you know, like I said, we placed the building trying to, you know, just do what our neighbors have done, not thinking that we were doing anything wrong.
Is the property line, is the fence there in the photograph, the property line?
No, man, we assumed that it was at one time in the beginning. Yeah, right there. The property line is actually, I took a picture showing that it's 8 feet, and I believe someone said, that's me there holding the tape out. To the fence is about 12 feet, and the property line actually runs at an angle from the road where that like electrical or
Right.
cable box is. You could barely see it, but it's right beside that, and it actually runs about at the far end of the fence. It's about 2 feet off of the fence line. Where I was standing, it's about 4 feet or so, but it runs at an angle and about maybe 8 feet past the end of the fence.
Okay. How many feet back does that, is it 125 feet back?
That
The property
144
line before it cuts in?
Yes, ma'am, but that 125 feet, I believe, is the neighbor's property. Mine says 144,
Okay. Okay.
which that's what I say, it goes about 8 feet or so beyond the corner of the fence, which right there at the corner is another building located by the adjacent neighbor.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, I have a question.
Yes.
Mr. Rackley, to grant a variance, one of the things that we have to find is that the hardship was not self-created. And you came in and testified to this, that you put the building there. So there wasn't a violation before, and then you did. And I noticed on your application, that question that we asked, what evidence is there to indicate that the hardship is not a result of your own actions? You didn't answer. This is your opportunity. For us to grant this variance, we have to find that this was not a result of your own actions. What argument can you make that this violation was not a result of your own actions?
The result is not of my own actions. You know, I can't claim ignorance, but like I said, there's no other place to put the building, and in relationship to the surrounding properties and the buildings placed on their properties, we thought we were doing the right thing. Like I said, if you see the topography site plan, there's way too much fall for a building to go anywhere else on the property. It's almost useless. Again, you know, I didn't do any site work to the property to cause this fall. I didn't lay out the plot here or the property lines. The building, my home is placed on the relatively only flat area on the property. Like as far as not creating this hardship, that's my only explanation, I guess, is that, I didn't do any site work. I didn't create the fall of the land. I didn't, lay out the property line, and, just based off of my surrounding neighbors and the placement of their buildings, I didn't know that I was in violation of any ordinances in Rockingham County.
Mr. Rackley, what is this building used for?
75–80% of it is used for storage. my son does band practice right now in it at least once a day. He plays the saxophone, so he goes out in that building and he plays the saxophone. He's doing really well. We've used this store building
Hence the need for it.
for general purposes. My wife has used it for editing some pictures, some crafts and stuff that she does. We've used it a lot of times, and we're fixing to do it again, to hide Christmas presents. I mean, it's a general use purpose. My wife has used it to do some photography, for newborns, because they can't be out in the rain or the cold or the heat or something. But that is, again, it's just a general purpose building, but 75–80% of the time we're storing stuff. She has a lot of props and backdrops and stuff that she stores. I got a catalytic converter that's stored in there right now. It's just, again, like I said, it's a general purpose building that we use for an array of different things, but mostly storage.
Are there any other questions from the board?
I just want to add that it's good to have a building like that for all those purposes, but it really doesn't have anything to do with the positioning of where the building's located, does it?
As far as the use of the building, the location of the building is just, again, based off of the lay of the land. It's the only feasible area, the only logical area to put the building. Anywhere else would just, like I said, would be unsightly. It would be, then there may be some legitimate complaints from the public. It just kind of flows with the home. I tried to, paint it the same color and just kind of get it to blend. And but yeah, as far as placement of any building, I don't think that use, any of the uses would be hindered
Okay.
by placing it elsewhere.
Is this building electrified?
It is. I did run some electric to it, and that was part of the whole thing with Mr. Bryson was, getting these permits and whatnot, and can't do anything until we apply for a variance. And like I said, without the granting of the variance, there's no other location on this property that I could. It would just have to be removed entirely. Yeah, I think I've provided the tax card, just showing that it has been acknowledged that the building has been there for so many years, 3, I think, plus. Taxes are being paid on it. I believe there's even fire insurance that my wife had put on it, second year it was there or something. Again, there was no legitimate complaints, and I know this is why we're here, is because of the anonymous complaint. But
I have a question, if you don't mind. The one piece that I didn't put in the up on the screen. Do you all have that?
Yes.
That aerial? Okay. And I was curious if the other buildings behind or beside the house are still there.
yeah, every building, there's, and on that, I'm not sure that it shows the neighboring. There's a building just on the other side of the fence, but yes, ma'am, all the buildings are still there. All the neighboring buildings and the photograph are there. I mean, in that topography site plan, you can see the circle there. That's a trampoline, and even that is on a slope. I mean, there's nothing flat about the property. You know, you guys, between the yellow lines is very small area.
Kerry, I have one quick question. So, I mean, just the way a variance is structured is I mean, it looks like, you know, the property, surrounding property owners said we're okay with this. Once the property, let's say any property sold, I guess that stays, the variance will stay with the property, right? Or with that building.
It would. Should the variance be granted, it would actually, the permitting process would be completed, and then you would have on the tax record a permitted building.
For this.
Yeah, that would be I think that would be the piece that a future sale would see, that it was permitted.
You know, prior to purchasing the property, we know that there was a carport in that same location. That's basically in line with our driveway, and you know, like I said, we didn't believe we were doing anything against any ordinances.
Is the carport still there when you bought the property?
No, it was, when the people moved out, they took it with them, I guess. But it was in the pictures of the realtor posted selling the home.
Yeah, it
was in
is.
the
It
pictures.
is.
Kerry, I have a question. He said that he had some signatures from neighbors. Have you all, as staff, gotten calls or inquiries about this property? I know he mentioned in his statement that neighbors were okay with this.
We have not received calls except for the complaint that originated the violation case.
That was anonymous.
I believe, well,
Okay.
we keep that information as anonymous information. Yeah, we don't share that information anyway.
James, what I was referencing was that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are no other questions. Thank you, Mr. Rackley.
Thank you.
No one signed up to speak about this case from the public. So unless we have, is there any further discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Or does that mean you'll have more questions? Carrie, in the event that we have no motion, please explain to us.
Well, I would suggest if anyone's finding it difficult to make a decision, refer to your analysis and statement and sort of go through that list. The first piece is that it used to be that the property owner had to prove that they could make no reasonable use of their property, but that has been changed. And this first one means that it would be unnecessary hardship from having to move, from having to meet the setback requirement by moving the building. Number two is conditions particular to the property that don't apply to other properties. And again, this is a dimensional zoning requirement that you are needing to show is different for this property than it might be for another. Number 3, that the hardship didn't result from actions taken by the applicant or property owner. And that the variance is consistent with the spirit,
I think that's what we're having the problem with.
purpose, and intent of the ordinance.
I think number 3 is what we're having the problem with. I'm just wondering, the building's only been there for 3 years, which is not a really long time. And I understand that people don't know what the letter of the law is when they think that doing something on their property is a good idea. And that's why we have these ordinances.
It is, and the requirement for building permits.
Yep. Yeah, and that's, that seems to be a bit of an issue here, that, it looks to be a nice building and everything. May have been purchased, well, he said it was purchased, not stick-built.
And Carrie, do you have to get a building permit for buildings under, I forgot the exact square footage?
We do. 400 square feet, I think, is the way we treat them here in Rockingham County, is that we just don't require structural analysis.
Same thing.
But we do require permits for any buildings, partly to check for zoning, such
I mean,
as
that's not,
setbacks.
it's caveat emptor, right?
Does this building fit in, this building doesn't fit into that category, does it?
It definitely requires a permit and a zoning, but, and would require building plans, but it looks to me to be a prefabricated building that, or maybe not. But the gentleman would have to bring plans of the building to the building inspector, but just not engineered structural drawings.
But we don't have any record of that.
No, there hasn't been a permit.
So that building was placed there without any notification to the county.
Correct.
We got a follow-up to that, because normally when folks are selling these buildings, don't they normally contact you guys and work with you a little bit? 'Cause that's my understanding.
There's one or two that will do that, but for the most part, they don't. For the most part, they're rather negligent about
You
that.
tell them where you want it, they come drive it.
Yeah, that's kind of what seems like it's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's, you need
So
to
can I
state
ask
that
one
for the
other
record.
question? If we don't approve this variance, what's the remedy?
His options are to dismantle the building altogether or to find an alternative place on the property for it. Should have said that in the other order.
Do we set a time frame when that has to be done by?
Typically, when it's an issue like this, as long as the property owner is making progress toward that end, for instance, having applied for a building permit and having called for an inspection, we don't put a specific time period on it. There may be, if too much time goes by, then we might put a dead stop time on it, but we try to give the owner an opportunity to make progress.
Madam Chair, I would like to point out in number 3, that the second sentence does say the act of purchasing property with knowledge of circumstances that exist may justify the granting of the variance. So it would appear to me that there is a little bit of, for lack of a better word, wiggle room.
I would like to also add that this is one of those situations, and we see these all the time, where people are just ignorant of the law, and we're talking about 8 feet here, 8 feet ignorant of the law or the ordinance, and he's run electricity out there because there appears to be a window unit air conditioner sitting there. So if the remedy is he's going to have to pick that building up and put it somewhere else. I'm wondering about how much hardship that would be, and is this one of those cases where, you know, there's a fence there, is that 8 feet going to harm anybody? Are we, if we stick to the letter of the law, it's one thing. If we don't, it's, you know, what, if we allow this wiggle room in this ordinance, what does it do to the community? What does it do to him? What does it do, you know, what is it, what are the harms or benefits?
Is there a precedent also associated with it?
Yes, I don't remember the subdivision, but we heard a case, it was a cul-de-sac, and the guy was I'm gonna probably get the numbers right. I want to say it was around 8 feet. And similar situations, the neighbors both had statements that said that they were fine with it, which is kind of what we've got here, so we have approved that before.
The message that I would receive is that you would want me to relook the setback requirements in that zoning district.
Yeah, it looks like there are a number of properties around there that,
And I mean, it doesn't mean that it's right if others are, but that you'd want me to look at that, because that would be the fair thing, is to,
well, bearing in mind that these ordinances are proposed almost as a one-size-fits-all, and not always does that one-size-fits-all correlate with what is beneficial to the citizens and homeowners and other people, and that's the reason for this body here, is so that we can look at these cases, understanding that, you know, there is a universal code. However, there's sometimes when that universal code does not serve the purpose of the citizenry, so, or the homeowner. So you know, it's which side you come down on.
Just for conversation purposes, I mean, I don't think, based on the neighbors and the situation, this is probably horrific here in this situation. I think we're looking at it more for number 3 and just reading the letter of the law.
Exactly.
And I'm almost positive there's several others. I mean, of course, I don't have no findings on that and taking a tape measure, but I'd be willing to bet money there are several on this particular road that are also in violation. But again, that's hearsay. That's for sure.
yeah, and that's why I would think you would ask me to look at it through the lens of safety, access, all the different, to ensure that that example is safe and isn't.
And I'm not questioning a 15-foot or a 30 on the side or any of that. I mean, what was when that was set up, or what was the intention? Or of course, you wouldn't hear.
Yeah, well, the setbacks were originally created to provide for light and air between buildings. So, and particular zoning districts are designed, when you go up and down the street, buildings are situated in a way that is common to that district. You go up and down a village street, the buildings may be set closer together, but that's a different zoning district. So setback is one way of,
Buffering.
sort of, but it's more about the appearance. It's more about the design and layout of the building within a zoning district.
And without having, I mean, it looks like we don't see any other houses, we don't have any photographs of any other houses in this area. But we're talking about out in the county where, you know, this is not a set subdivision with,
Well, it's a subdivision of sorts, but
right,
all
but
the neighbors have
Right.
all signed off that they're,
right.
and I don't think it visually looks bad, especially since the fence line was offset so much for neighbor property.
Well, and it is pertinent that there are 5 neighbors that have signed off in support of this. I mean, they're not here to say that, but yeah, they have.
Mr. Scott, you were asking about precedent, and I can remember several times in the last several years where this board denied variances for things like carports and things that were too close to the line. But as Ms. Spencer said, the legislature kind of liberalized when you're allowed to grant variances recently. You know, it used to be that you couldn't grant a variance unless the applicant could not make use of the land without it. And now, the legislature did it pretty recently, liberalize it, so we don't have to find that anymore. It makes it a little bit easier to grant these. I think the terms of one is a little more real.
Right.
But I'll be glad to make a motion.
Okay.
And we can vote it up and down.
Okay.
Excuse me. I was going to ask Carrie if I could make reference to a couple past cases in reference to this type of case.
If they're, you know, if you're doing that through the lens of how you're interpreting this case,
Right. Well, I know.
once you start talking, I can let you know if it's appropriate.
Pardon?
If you start mentioning the other cases, I can tell you if it's.
Okay, well, you know, Mr. White mentioned reference of case 2018, that a metal carport was basically too close to the property line. In the same way in 2018, a fellow had a utility building that was fairly close to the property line, was just out in a wide open area. And both were, you know, weren't approved. So, you know, I didn't know, in looking at some of these past cases we've had, I don't know how this one would fall into play, or whether the rules had been relaxed
Yeah, at
as
what
time
point?
went on.
The law was changed and the rules were relaxed.
Yeah.
We still do have to find that the hardship did not result from actions taken by the property owner. As some people have mentioned, I think that's what we're struggling with.
Mhm.
I'll be glad to make a motion and we can vote it up and down.
Please do.
I move to approve the request for a variance and make the following four findings. Unnecessary hardship would result from strict application of the ordinance because the applicant would have to dispose of the building. The hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography. Here, that is that the fall of the land leaves little buildable space. Number three, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the property owner because the applicant did not perform the site work that resulted in the slope of the land. Or the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that the public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved, because several other surrounding properties have structures that appear to also be within the setback, and several surrounding property owners have consented to this variance. And the Board of Adjustment has also determined that the variance will not extend an area or expand the non-conforming use of land, change the district boundaries on the zoning map, impair any adequate supply of light and air to adjacent property, materially increase the public danger of fire, materially diminish or impair established property values within the surrounding area, or in any other respect impair the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries.
And I'm sure that staff will follow up with the applicant to complete the permitting process.
Thank you very much. Okay. If I can find my agenda. Do I hear, no, do we have to, we don't have to go back into planning board?
No.
Okay. we can, we can go on
Remember I said
to,
that, I said that last time, what would Paul do? You can, he would reconvene the planning board.
do I have a motion to adjourn the Board of Adjustment?
Have a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? All in favor? All opposed? We are back now into the planning
I
board.
actually used that
Thank
last time,
you.
what would Paul do?
Yeah. What would Paul do? See, I did ask.
There isn't any old business, Madam Chair.
And there's new business.
There is new business. The consultant for the land use plan and UDO rewrite is here to present the land use plan to you, to look for input from you. The advisory group has been working on this plan for quite a long time. And it's just a point now where they want to know what your input is. And one of the things I was going to ask you to do is particularly pay attention to the policies at the end of the land use plan by thinking about projects or cases that you've heard recently and sort of run them through that, especially if there were cases that were difficult to make a decision on. If those policies will help guide you anymore, because that's what they're intended to do. The policies follow the desired land use and guide you toward making decisions like tonight. And I'm about, I probably later I'll ask Eric about putting in an exception to the setback for buildings less than 400 square feet or something like that, and look and see what other municipalities have done and decide whether or not, because if you get a lot of, especially in the variance world, you get a lot of variances for similar things, you need to look and see whether the ordinance is correct. Or if it is,
And Carrie, I'll just say from what I'm seeing out in the field, I run across this quite a bit. I'm just hoping and praying it's on the lot itself with a lot of these structures. So they hadn't been, so we're hearing them now,
So Eric,
I'm worried about my building now.
would you introduce yourself properly and?
You want
I
to
have
swear
to.
in?
Wait a minute.
Wait, is this testimony?
Not yet. Well, Carrie said presentation. I'm going to just say more like an introduction.
Okay.
Thank you. And I actually was going to remind you that it is 8:15.
She was going to remind you that it's 8:15.
It's 8:15.
They're fully aware of the time that we get traveled.
Yeah, absolutely. Carrie, correct me if I'm wrong, but you sent out the draft
I did.
documents about 90% or so. So just a real quick introduction. My name's Eric Woolridge, Destination by Design. We've been working with the Board of Commissioners and the advisory group for getting close to a year. 2 projects: create a whole new land use plan for the community, and then also update the UDO. Both of those are probably hovering around the 90% mark. I've got a little schedule here that's in front of me, and Carrie, you may have shared this with the board. If not, we can get it out to you. But
Briefly, at
Yeah,
the
it's-
last meeting,
so this is October 22nd, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
the first, yeah.
Today is November 9th.
Yeah.
It was October 22nd several days
was
ago.
when this whole,
Say,
I know
don't
it.
say.
So,
Election will be.
It's true.
exactly. So we met
No.
with the steering committee
The 8th.
on October 22nd. We met with them again today. Those are kind of finished up the last 2 meetings with the advisory group. Now they're kind of wanting to put this ball into your court a little bit. I'm going to come back for the December 14th meeting. I'm going to be here at the January 11th meeting, and I'll be here at the February 8th meeting as well. Our goal between now and progressing through those meetings is to refine the planning document, get as much input from you all as you all would like to make, hear from you all. Ideally, either at the December or January meeting, we would be pretty close to adopting just the land use plan. So just want to focus on the planning document itself, try to make sure the policies are in there that reflect the need that you all see as you all have done your job. I mean, I'm sure some of you have done the job longer than others.
Can you clarify for us, this is just the plan?
So that's the land use plan, yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So
Gotcha.
that document is not, very different than your zoning ordinance. But you saw Carrie reference the future land use map there, the target growth areas and so forth. All of those have kind of changed. The future land use map that's in there, and then going through each of the policies and so forth. So we leave things pretty loose where you all can interpret things and make decisions that are rational and that fit with the context in which you all have cases. And then, of course, we're completely altering the UDO. I'll share a couple things there. One, just from an organizational standpoint, it's been pretty much overhauled. Currently, for major subdivisions, you all see a lot of rural protected rezoning cases, correct? That will no longer take place in the way that we've reconstructed the UDO. If you're doing a major subdivision and you're building roads to NCDOT standards, you can do that by right. However, you have to build that with homes that meet NC building code, meaning manufacturing homes, trailers, things along those lines would still have to go through a rezoning process. So trying to simplify things for the basic standard rural subdivision, but certainly would have to go through a rezoning if you're going to do a manufactured home.
So if you're currently residential agriculture, you could do a subdivision?
That's correct.
All right.
Right.
Okay.
Well, you use the word manufactured home. and
Yep.
I think that there's two different definitions of that. And I think we get confused on that because there's some manufactured homes that are built up in Martinsville, that are stick-built houses basically in a factory. And then you
Modular
Well-
versus manufactured. So modular homes are built in a factory to the building code. Manufactured trailers
some
are
trailers,
not.
and so I think.
And they're
we need to be
clearly
clear on
marked.
Nomenclature.
Yeah, they're clearly,
So-
yeah, go ahead.
So in the definitions, your manufactured home is going to be defined by one that meets HUD standards. Okay, and from a regulatory standpoint, you all can have different restrictions on it because it is constructed to the HUD standards. Whereas a modular home is built to North Carolina Building Code, so you could do a major subdivision of all modular homes, where they're all meet
Yeah.
NC Building Code, they can't really be treated any differently.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Even though they're
So that's one
manufactured.
significant change. Your rural protected zoning district, I shouldn't say, we're leaving it in there, but it will essentially become obsolete. We just need to kind of let that lie, if you will. Other changes, your or your residential mixed, which is how you all are rezoning for manufactured home subdivisions, that will completely change. That will no longer be an allowed use within residential mixed. Okay, there's going to be a separate manufactured home subdivision zone. So it's very clear to adjacent landowners what's happening here. This is because the residential mix allows for a variety of different home types. We want to be very explicit about manufactured homes. And we're going to completely overhaul, and have done so, the residential mixed zone. That is going to be for areas where you've got water, you've got sewer, and you're trying to attract a variety of housing types, townhomes, small lot, detached, single family, maybe some duplexes, and in the land use plan, we go through great length talking about the missing middle. In today's world, you see a lot of single family and you see a lot of big apartment complexes, and there's nothing really in between. We want to try to pull that into the county here and try to have a variety of housing types that bring in families, that bring in people getting a start, that bring in retirees, et cetera. So we've gone through quite a bit of length kind of establishing that policy in the land use plan. How do we implement that? It's through that the residential mixed zoning district. So that is a really fundamental change and difference. Now, when you get to an area where you have water, sewer,
and it's not appropriate just for residential, but also there's a commercial aspect, that's where the planned unit development's going to come into play. And if you read the document where it is right now, we talk about the mixed-use zoning district. In the meeting we had just prior to this, we agreed with the advisory group, we're going to remove that and have just the planned unit development, and that'll be the main rezoning tool you'll have for when you have a mix of uses, residential, commercial, et cetera. It could also apply out into the county. You have someone who wants to do a wedding venue and a little general store and a campground. Like, it could be a variety of things. So all the things that we can't account for, that planned unit development will be an avenue for people to come to you, and it'll go very similar to the conditional district process, right? So for those of you, I'm sure most of you are aware of that. So you'd come in, you'd present a site plan and so forth.
Well, and I wanted to iterate to them, because I know it's going to be an issue. They're going to be asking the difference between what we do now and that will be detailed, much more detailed sketches of what is going to be intended. So more detail in what's going to be there, the uses, the general footprints of where the buildings will be on the site. And Eric was about to mention site plan, so that's another important difference.
So moving forward, the zoning board will be looking more of the site plan aspect of it, not just a straight zoning aspect. We're going to be looking a little bit more on the exact intended uses.
Yeah, you won't be looking at the technical aspects of the site plan, but you're looking at whether those uses in those general areas are, how they might impact surrounding properties.
Yep. And there's references from a policy standpoint in the land use plan related to open space, to trails, to how things relate to each other, environmental considerations. Some of those I think you all will find will apply in certain areas, and some places you're going to be like, you know what, open space here is not going to be used, or that doesn't really apply here. And so there's flexibility and freedom in there. But it's going to be incumbent upon the applicant to present a site plan to you all that meets the intent of the land use plan. And then you all, over time, are going to have the opportunity to influence that and help shape that and make sound recommendations to the commissioners in accordance with the land use plan. So that's the goal. That's what I hope happens.
I do have one quick question. When we're talking about infrastructure, water, sewer,
Yep.
things that we're obviously expanding now.
Yep.
So when we're doing this now, we know exactly where we have them 10 years out.
Sure.
How will the zoning be, when we're looking at that based on, let's say, the residential mix?
Yeah.
Combination townhomes, single family homes. How is that looked at in the future with the infrastructure?
So, the future land use map, and it's probably around page 40-ish or something like that, it's the beginning of the recommendations chapter, is going to be your main guidance on that.
Okay.
And that map will be probably one of the first maps that Carrie pops up, in presentations, and as she starts to set the stage for you all to make decisions, okay? That map highlights a growth area, and if you just want to hold it up there. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
So you can kind of see the 220 corridor, and then there in the southern area, that area, that's where water and sewer is being run to right now. And so that kind of sets the stage. Now, we've identified different rural neighborhood commercial nodes that are out in the county that are meant to be like, someone has a neighborhood commercial, something along those lines. You're trying to attract that at different key intersections. So over 20, 50, 100 years, like there's orderly growth as opposed to things being quite so random. But we then again put in their policies where if someone wants to identify an intersection where they think it's appropriate for neighborhood commercial, they can propose that to you all, provided it meets the intent of some of the others. So there's meant to be some flexibility in there.
Yeah,
sir.
Paul, you can be.
What is the realistic life expectancy of this plant? You said 20, 30, 40, 100 years. What's the realistic life expectancy?
Life expectancy is probably, I think in 5 to 8 years you want to do an update, but it could last 10 years.
The way it's set up, I'm going to be recommending that we look at the demographic data in 2 years, because we haven't seen the census yet. So we're going to just regroup the demographic data, update that, and then I mean, I would say more on the 5-year. It depends on how quickly development is happening. And is development following the plan? If it's not, something needs to change. Is development happening at all? Is the plan still a good guideline in that respect? So we'll ask it a bunch of questions in 2 years and then in 5 years, and then we'll know.
Well, that makes sense. My experience having come from Greensboro to Eaton, I lived in Greensboro for 35 years. And when I first moved there in 1980, I guess it was somewhere around there, the population was 80,000 people. Today it's kissing 300,000. And in just those 35 years, Greensboro had at least a half a dozen land use plans that they have to keep being redone and redone and redone. And it's all market driven.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
what it comes down to.
Yeah, the other factor here is that's a municipality. You've got a water, sewer infrastructure. There's the potential to really drive a lot of density, a lot of job growth, and so forth. This is
a lot of theirs through annexation.
Fair enough, yeah. Here we're in this county environment, and honestly, what makes this land use plan interesting, if you will, from a planning perspective, is that you are bringing water and sewer down that corridor, and you're able to bring in some level of density, and you have the chance to create some places, like some real places.
And I have a question about that. Philip, if you'll hold that up again. So the little yellow areas, you refer to them as nodes. I find that, I want to hear a little bit more about that, because that is interesting to me. Do I remember hearing you say that should be a place where that could be used as growth areas and specific areas where we could do some interesting things?
And this label here is low density.
Right.
Growth.
Right.
Yeah.
So that I'm intrigued by that piece of it. If there is a long range.
The thinking behind that, maybe to start with, kind of the concept of the
Yeah.
Yeah, when I talk about really interesting, I'm talking about where you've got water and sewer, and that's along the 220 corridor. Going out into these nodes or these rural intersections, you're going to be limited in the type of design you can achieve because you're a county, which means that you don't maintain or require sidewalks. It means that you don't have sewer there, and you have a 50-50 shot that you're going to have water.
Right.
So you're not going to be able to create a walkable place, right?
But but it appears to me that if our planning or our growth has been sort of scattershot up to this point, maybe I found that map fascinating, quite frankly, just because there seems to be some cohesion instead of randomness about it.
That's
the
the
goal.
idea.
Yeah.
And this is a
Yeah.
long-term, this is
Yeah,
realtors and advisory group and people saying, I can see this area becoming more developed. Let's focus on this node.
Right.
And you know what else? Think about the way towns have grown organically with the grocery store, grocery convenience store. That's a node.
Right.
That's an intersection node, and the idea is to concentrate the more, not dense, but concentrate more housing in those nodes.
Right.
As well
It's
as other
like
commercial.
where I live, there's, even though I'm in the city limits, there's a little growth area there at the intersection of 135 and Loop Road. So, because there's no other really retail until you go into town. So that map caught my eye, that, there's at least some type of, there's a rhyme and reason to looking forward with it.
And our design team, we took like one of those random intersections, and we've been working on like a visual that shows, all right, how could this build out over time? And we said, all right, say there's a drive-through on one corner, and there's a gas station on another corner, and there's a Dollar General or a Rite Aid, or and we kind of build that out and then show residential around it and show how things connect and so forth. And that's meant to be kind of a prescriptive idea that shows the development community what we're trying to achieve over time, and helps you all from a policy perspective help push things, helps your planning staff kind of push the development community along those lines.
And not that we would
Yep.
ever be this, but what really brought, when I saw that, I immediately envisioned Briar Creek and Raleigh, out in the county, in between Durham, right out by the airport. Well, that ends up almost being in a community of itself, because it's got retail, housing, schools out there, that kind of thing. And I thought, wow. When I looked at it, I thought, we're kind of coming up in the world.
Yeah, I would think it's rural neighborhood commercial at this point. In terms of placemaking, I would just really encourage staff, this board, and the commissioners. You're making a massive investment on water and sewer infrastructure down 220. You're going to have 1 to 3 opportunities to create some unique development that takes advantage of that infrastructure investment, and that I feel like is where the plan will either make it or break it.
Where you're setting the tone, this is the size of development that will actually establish some price point regularity. It will, it's a lot of like, are we going to be like this, or are we going to be like that?
And so we have some conceptual renderings in there of that.
Yeah, there's some good ones.
Yeah.
And that's the plan, that's
And
similar to
we-
what you're talking about.
That's
yeah.
That's the 220 corridor.
Yeah, exactly. So that's
There-
that's what we call your target growth area.
Yeah, there are areas all up and down 85 outside
Yeah.
of Charlotte that do that exact same thing. Yeah, out in those counties.
So is there a reason why you didn't focus, I mean, we are making the investment in water and sewer on the 220 corridor.
Sure.
Is there any reason why we didn't do any thinking about the 29, the 780 corridor?
Well, where the water and sewer there is if within municipal areas, and but it's not that the same thing couldn't apply over there. You all could take the same principles and say, like, in 2 or 3 years, like, oh wow, there's a real opportunity, there's a developer, and you have the policy here to be able to make that decision and take that liberty.
But what you're saying, Greensboro's moving north, and it's not moving
Yeah.
north on 29, it's moving north on 220.
Yeah, and that's where where you all have
Yeah.
infrastructure that's within the county jurisdiction, as opposed to, the municipal or ETJ areas that you all are not going to be able to control from a planning standpoint.
Right.
It's not to say they're not important, it's just to say that our job was to focus on the unincorporated areas and so
Right.
forth. All that could change. And in fact, if you all look at the future land use map and you want to say, you know what, I think that we need to consider this particular transect for this particular area, that's fair. We're all ears on that. And keep in mind, in order to understand the future land use map, you have to understand the land use transect. And it goes from your most rural green open spaces into very low density, into a little bit more density, and you find this transect across the landscape throughout North Carolina time and time again. And so you're trying to create that in a very natural way over time.
It's like taking a slice, like a cross-section of the development along a line from more rural to denser. And then, and each part of the transect has descriptive, is identified through description and what's expected there.
And it sounds like that we're asking ourselves to almost rethink what our county is. It's no longer just a strictly rural, we're not,
Yeah.
we just need to reimagine ourselves
Yeah,
as,
This is a pretty radical
Yeah.
departure from where we.
Right.
But
Well,
the
and it-
the market is really dictating.
Yeah.
Exactly, it's not,
Getting
it's not so much that, it's the the growth that will happen, it's leading it, it's not creating the growth or creating the scenario, it's leading the inevitable growth into a pattern. So it's not so much that we're changing the county, it's that the market is changing the county, and we're guiding it toward
Instead of being a
specific
reactive
areas.
to what's happening, we could be
Yeah.
Proactive.
It's
At least have a
important to make that
vision.
distinction.
You know, it's that almost mission vision kind of thing where, yeah.
So you get builders to say, here's different ways of doing these communities. Do it this way instead of just building a bunch of
Yeah,
single.
do we have any idea what the impact on commerce or the economy if we adopt this and sort of look forward instead of, this is what we always were, and understanding that the world is changing? Will there be any kind of can we quantify or start to quantify what this could mean for us?
We certainly haven't done a market study to say this is exactly what this area, but looking big picture, we all can observe and see, all right, this is plausible, right? And so now we've got to put the ordinance in a position to where developers are attracted to it. We've got to put the infrastructure in place so that it can actually be done. So those two things are being done.
So it'll support
But
those goals.
overall strategy, we were trying to drive rooftops into smaller areas that have good access to transportation, that don't impact our rural areas, take advantage of the sewer, and with enough rooftops, we can drive the rooftop counts necessary to attract commercial. And you want to attract that commercial, and now all of a sudden you got jobs, you got a higher tax base, and you all are moving forward. Like that's the overall planning. So
Right.
I can't give you specifics, but I can say that's the planning theory that's been applied here.
Well, and you just said something maybe a little differently that I can visualize that a little bit better, that, just driving through the county, there are rooftops in very scattered manners. They're not, and you're right, if we concentrate the rooftops in a place where the commerce can complement it, or that makes all the sense in the world to me.
But what's changed here is when you start running water and particularly sewer, you really start to act more like a municipality than you do a county, frankly. And the responsibility becomes much greater. I don't want to put too much pressure on you, but some of the decisions that are going to be made in there here in the next 5 to 7 years will impact generations. I mean, it's really that simple. And so you're going to have 1, 2, 3 shots at it.
At getting it right.
And so I'd encourage you to keep your bar high and make sure that the development that comes in is what you want, because you're going to live with it for a long time.
But now we're going to have a better opportunity to dictate that, because at this point, when somebody goes to apply for a rezoning on a large tract of land, you're just rezoning the lot. Now with the kind of the site plans, essentially, we're going to have better.
Not with every major subdivision. If we're talking about a site plan when there's a mix of residential and commercial, a residential major subdivision is basically going to be what you've been seeing all along.
But I guess
roads
if
and
it
lot-
stay in RA, because typically I guess we don't see the road stuff from the zoning side, right?
Yeah.
So I guess if it stay in RA, I guess would that even come before the planning board?
It would not.
No.
It would just be a subdivision approval by the TRC. By TRC, and anything that you might be looking at impact-wise is set by a density cap, location. I mean, I think we talked about this a lot, where allowing major subdivisions by right is really makes a lot of sense. Then-
Yeah, I mean, I would say, have you all ever turned down a rural protected subdivision, right? I mean, it's a major subdivision that's in the county, right? Let's not spend our time and energy in that space, but in the places where we need great design and we're trying to maximize the infrastructure investments that we made. Like that's where the focus is in this plan, and that's where we're trying to guide the ordinance.
And we'll cap the density for those major subdivisions so that you'll we're using existing subdivisions. Winsome Forest, for instance, is a lot and a quarter per acre. So we used some metrics like that to set a density cap for those
Well, it's
subdivisions.
1.25 units.
Per, 1.25 acres per unit. No,
Yeah,
it's a little over,
1.25 units per
Acre,
density
mhm.
average.
Yeah, yeah. A little bit more than a,
Do we, and
Yeah.
I don't want to get up on a tangent, do we require two entrances for a major, or, two points of entry and exit, or is it just one right now?
right now, it's just one. We hadn't gone to that place.
Yeah, we do some private development as well over in Kings Mountain. We're doing a project right now, and we've got about 500 units in this particular with only one entry. Well, you can only do 200 units with one entry. So the developer's quickly trying to scramble to find another way to ingress egress. But so we can look at those items, and I'm not so sure they're not in the code at some point. The other thing I'll say about the UDO is we also have some very basic architectural design standards for commercial, really simple, like 5, dealing with basic facade requirements, basic roof lines, basic materials, and there's a lot of flexibility in there. So I want us to stay focused these next couple of meetings on just the land use plan, and then when we move to the UDO, we'll all need to kind of get up to speed on that and make sure we're all comfortable with that. And actually, those are a lot of things that Carrie will be implementing on the planning to kind of more technical side. But I do expect when people come, when developers come here for a planned unit development or say a mixed residential conditional district rezoning, that they might be bringing along some facade elements to show how they're meeting that part of the ordinance. So. But you all have the ordinance. If you don't have my email or phone, welcome to kind of walk through things, explain things, so forth. I'm not sure what the marching orders are, Carrie. I know we want some feedback on any policy statements. Think through very specific cases where, it would have been helpful for us to have a policy regarding this type of issue.
Yes.
And you can talk to us very generally. We have enough experience in our office to know, all right, we understand what you're saying there, and we can come up with some different policies and directions.
So we're going to be hopefully approving the land use plan at the next meeting.
Yeah,
So-
if
but
that's possible.
That might be, it may or may not be a stretch. It depends on what you see. You've got to look at it so that, for instance, and this is something the advisory group told us today, that they really want to know if you have ideas about it. So they weren't going to meet again, but they are happy to meet again to discuss ideas that you might bring to them, to the table. So it was just basically marching orders wise,
Yeah.
reading over it, letting me know if we can anticipate a December 14th approval. I will say that we're keeping that agenda clean of cases, keeping it clear of cases, so that meeting will be devoted just to the land use plan.
I think that would be helpful. I'm just wondering if those board members that are here, does that sound doable, that we can do our homework and have it sort of study and read it and sort of think in those from that?
Read it again.
Yeah, I'm going,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, just
I
do
glanced through it this week, but not like I want to.
Right.
Maybe-
Well,
maybe-
but I think do a pretty good study of it, because when you start looking at this thing, Carrie's correct. If you look at it, or if you study it from the point of view of we've seen these cases here, or we've had this issue there, is this what we want to? Is this where we want to see our county go?
And keep it at that overall policy level too. Sometimes it can be really hard. You get down a rabbit hole, like we started to a little bit earlier tonight. It's really hard not to about
We would
about details.
never, ever go down a rabbit hole, Carrie.
But
last week.
but just check yourself when you're getting into
Me,
too many
I'm the one.
specifics, or call me and find out, and I'll help redirect you to that broader level.
Yeah.
But how about
What's our major focus on? I mean, there's so much great
The
stuff.
policies?
I really want to hear.
Yeah.
Is it section 4 and 5? Is that what?
Yeah, the
section-
recommendations chapter. And then the implementation chapter summarizes all the policies, and then it connects back to which of the emerging themes kind of tie to
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's what I
The
get.
overall policy
Four
themes.
is the, is
Five
the,
seemed like the most useful place to,
Yeah.
5 is the, chapter 5 is the matrix of policies. A chapter back will explain them in more detail,
detail, yeah.
section by section, but
but all of the points are all in
Mm-hmm.
the section 5.
Yeah.
But we are doing the 25 or 30,000 foot view of this thing.
Yeah.
And the long term, so, yeah.
yeah. And you'll see when you start to read it, the sort
Okay.
of policies
Well, it's come
that are,
together.
the kind of language and the kind of thing that a policy does when you read it. Do you want to, I would like to hear back from everybody in a specific time period. I would make you read it over, what, next weekend? Can anybody commit to
Next
reading
2
it
weeks.
by next, the
By the
end of
Monday
next week?
of Thanksgiving week?
You want to be able to read it over Thanksgiving?
No, I said by the Monday of Thanksgiving. We
Oh,
would
by
get
the Monday,
feedback, so
okay.
that's 2
So that
weeks
gives you
from-
2 weekends.
2 weeks from tonight.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's November 23rd, and that would be still time, that's, 1, 2, that's 3 weeks before,
Yeah.
before the meeting, before the
Right.
planning board meeting, and we'll know at that point how comfortable you are after having read it.
Do you
Here-
anticipate any changes to this document? As an
No, there
update?
might be a policy or two in there that we're either going to tweak or add. And then there's a few graphics in there that you see that are still missing,
Yeah,
that we're,
I
that we're
noticed that.
still
So you're gonna
refining.
So you're going to send an update, or do we
Yeah.
just kind of work with the one we have?
I would work with what you have
Work with
there,
what you
particularly those policies, and we'll highlight any changes that are coming in the next round.
Okay.
And I suspect like we can all spend, 30 minutes to 45 minutes during the next meeting, and we'll kind of go through those policies. I'll kind of break things down a little bit more explicitly and make sure everyone's comfortable with it.
Yeah, let's see what our comfort level is, sort of leave it open a little bit, but Carrie, would you be willing to babysit just a little bit and remind us that we have to do our homework, because
Well, that's what I'm getting, that's what I was queuing up here for, so we're talking about Monday, the 21st. Oh, wait a minute, sorry, Monday, the 23rd.
23rd,
Monday, the 23rd of November, that's 2 weeks from now.
yeah.
What was that, Paul?
Are you suggesting that this plan be approved at the next December meeting?
That's the fastest schedule that we could be on.
I think that's a little unrealistic. I
Yeah.
think
It's on the computer, I think.
There's a voice of reason.
I had a hard copy, but I don't know. what
I
it is.
still,
Carrie
can we
get you-
still commit to
She can get
having
you a
read
hard
it by that Monday of Thanksgiving, so we know
Yeah,
just
it's a
how,
big fat note.
how,
feedback.
how much of an understanding
Rather
there
than
is?
feedback.
You know, how much questions,
Oh.
how many questions there might be? Is it,
I don't
do we
know.
get it at all?
Availability,
I'm
if we want to
sure
come
it's-
down one day during the week.
She can get you a
And-
hard copy,
and-
but I've seen it
Yeah.
Yeah,
electronically.
not only ask
Absolutely.
questions, Just make sure on the same page that we're all looking
Yeah.
at stuff.
Yeah, the January 11th planning board meeting, which we'll be at here, I really wanted to start focusing on the UDO, but it's not to say that at the beginning of that meeting, we'd have more time. We could all make sure we're comfortable with the land use plan, and then maybe we could adopt it then. So I see no problem waiting more. We're going to be here. We're going to be here December, January, and February, so.
Okay.
So do we send the feedback to you, Carrie?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and we'll send a reminder.
Yeah, like 2 or 3 days
Tomorrow,
before.
We'll send a reminder in the morning. Emily, could you do that? Just say, here's what we said last night. And then, I'm going to say that on Fridays, both of those Fridays, we send another reminder. Here comes the
yeah, that
weekend,
would be
don't
good
forget
because-
to look at the,
And my last question on the timetable, so if it's approved, let's say in January, so then it goes to the Board of Commissioners, is that correct?
you would make
That's
a
correct.
recommendation to
Yeah,
them,
recommendation.
Okay,
as you would for a zoning case.
for the February meeting. Is there a public comment section, or is it during that? Okay, during that hearing.
They have to hold a public hearing to adopt the land use plan, and there will
Yeah.
be public comment. Same thing with the UDO, but they'll be at different meetings.
So there is the potential, right, potential.
Yeah.
Of February,
Always.
potentially, you know, depending on the, you know, commissioners and everything else in this
Yeah.
approval process.
Which, you know, is it makes Paul's statement make more sense. You want to be, when you make your recommendation, you want to be behind it.
Okay.
And they're going to be looking to you for that recommendation.
Especially with the
and what.
Right.
magnitude
Of the change.
Right, of this,
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to, you know, when you brought that up, be sure, as you talk to people about this, not to give the impression that we're not, this plan isn't going to make the county grow. This plan isn't saying, we're going to grow this here and here and here. This plan is guiding growth. If we don't get the growth, it won't, it's market-driven, like you said. It won't come to fruition. But the identifying different areas does not make them become that.
But if they do become that, we can manage it.
Yeah, this is the way you manage
We can manage what
growth. And
happens.
that's, yeah.
That's the role of the planning board, is to manage that
Exactly.
growth. And make the county, you know, a desirable place.
We're here to
not
make the
only-
county a better place. A better place to live, work, and
Especially
play.
better in Guilford.
Yeah.
Not only with this overall plan, but every decision that you make is moving.
Make
Every time
Rockingham
Someone comes
County
to
a
ask
good
you,
place.
I want to grow, I want to help you grow.
Yeah.
This is we say, well, I want to help you too. Here's how we do it. Here's how we're going to do it.
And Carrie, I think it's worth noting that I really appreciate your enthusiasm for this, because I get the sense that, I don't want to say you're driving this a little bit, but you have, from the very beginning, this is what you've talked about.
Oh, this is the fun part for me.
Yeah,
This is a really,
you've
this is a
talked
really
about
great part.
Yeah, you've talked about a vision or an overall vision and a move forward or a progression, and that's just music to my
Well,
ears. so.
and the idea of giving you tools to use, like real solid tools that drive the growth toward a vision.
Brings us up into the big time.
And that's actually makes it better for everybody.
Well, great to meet you all.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Look
Thank
forward to
you.
working with you.
Absolutely.
All right.
Eric, thanks for coming
Yes,
tonight and staying so late.
it's a beautiful plan.
Kara,
Impressive.
I don't have any other business, by the way. Oh, Emily sent you a calendar
Yes,
for next year's.
yes.
Um,
Some of this.
Would you just tell us that that's the calendar you're going to recommend to Board of Commissioners?
That looks like the calendar we're going to recommend to the
All right.
board.
So one reason-
Looks just
we
like
looked
it.
at we looked at holidays.
We've-
There's no
yeah.
change in the regularly scheduled day of the week. We're still doing the every other week has an optional meeting if needed.
Right.
So appreciate I wanted you to say that you looked at it and we can recommend it to them next.
We did.
Thank you.
Was there anything that we wanted to do in relation to the last meeting and revising the ordinances on travel trailers and RVs and stuff like that? Or are we going to embody that into
That's
our?
something that I'm going to put into
Got it, okay.
the ordinance rewrite, yeah.
Got it, okay, that's what I thought you would do.
Yeah, yeah.
If there is no other business, do I have a motion to adjourn? Second. All approved? All opposed? Nobody. Thank you very much. Meeting is adjourned.